Two psychiatrists are walking along Chicago's North Avenue beach one day. It's summertime, obviously. One looks the other up and down and says, "You look like you're doing well." "How am I?" Let's talk about something I'm pretty sure you haven't thought about. Outsourcing. Welcome to Real Talk with Mark West, a podcast about owning your shit and playing through life.
I do what I want. If people would just accept that, we could get along. Come to me if you want to. I ain't scared. Shit, I bike in Chicago. I feel like I'm Neo in the Matrix, but I suck at it. I'm dodging right into the bullets, you know?
It was good therapy.
I'm your host, Mark West. Welcome. Happy New Year, everybody. This is Real Talk with Mark West, where we're trying to have better conversations with ourselves so we can have better conversations with others. But no one said we can't have some fun along the way. This week, I'm diving into the real shit. So I hope you brought your hard hat, because I'm dropping some heavy truths that it's time for us to parse. It's time for us to deal with this. Oh my goodness, everyone. I had so much anxiety about this episode because it's true to me. It's true to how I am. I've always kind of thought countercultural and went against the grain, and I've always been vocal about sharing those thoughts and feelings. And to be honest, it really wasn't until the past few months that really started to shake up my world. Everything around me started to implode. My relationship fell apart. And people just started dissolving all over the simple fact that I have my own way of thinking. And I won't validate them by agreeing with their point of view. So there's a little bit of PTSD going into today. But you might be able to tell the tone is different, the mood is different, and it's old school Mark here chilling with you today. When I first started this podcast, the episodes were a bit more warm and fuzzy. I was sharing my personal values and my ideas behind mindfulness and where these practices came from. But I was just kind of laying the groundwork for the real shit we need to talk about and deal with going forward. So let's dive right in. I don't know if you saw the movie that just came out on Netflix with Meryl Streep, Leo DiCappuccino, and a bunch of other names you probably know, but it's called Don't Look Up. Two scientists discover a comet hurtling towards Earth and are frantically trying to convince everyone on this media tour that we must do something in order to save all of humanity. It touched on a lot of themes. It kind of hit close to home for a lot of people. And I did one thing you're not supposed to do online. I started reading through the comments. I looked up the trailer on YouTube and I wanted to know what people thought about the movie because I was curious. Obviously, I have my own opinions, but I wanted to know what other people thought. And I heard some of the things that I'm sure you expected to hear from them. The movie was about self-centrism. It was about narcissism. It was about greed. It was about human stupidity. It was about the media brainwashing everyone. And I can understand how they came to those conclusions. But personally, I believe there's an underlying message that's even deeper than all of that. And that's the message I want to talk about today. I want to talk about outsourcing. The practice of one company hiring another company to be responsible for a planned or existing activity that is or could be done internally. A very basic sample of this is hiring a landscaper to mow your lawn so that you don't have to. Outsourcing is a dangerous issue. It's a huge problem in our society today, and I feel like this film was kind of serendipitous. I didn't plan it, but it happened to align with exactly what I wanted to talk about first thing in the new year. This new generation is vocal and active and the most involved generation we've seen. Very accepting and in a position in which they are ready to call out and identify many marginalized groups. But on the other side of that same coin, we are living in some of the most judgmental times ever, in which two people under the same roof can't even get along because of their differing ideas. the very important conversations we're trying to have, we can't have those conversations with others because we are unwilling to first have these very important conversations with ourselves. And that's the elephant in the room that I'm going to be calling out each and every time. These conversations fail because of outsourcing. Outsourcing of what? Outsourcing our thoughts, our feelings, our personal responsibility. In the film, it's a nation on edge, on the brink of dystopia. Everyone is frantic. And in order to calm the masses, and in order to pacify ignorance, they're leading under a banner, "Don't look up." There's no comment coming. Don't look up. If you want to feel better, just don't look up. And on the other side, everyone's saying, well, why don't you just look up? Why don't you just look up and see if this is true? And of course, you see the major parallels in our society, feeling as though we're on the brink of dystopia. People on differing sides, unable to build a bridge. And we live under this umbrella of don't look it up. We have all of these experts presenting their thoughts and findings based off of their feelings, based off of me-search instead of research. And we feel because we saw it in our news feed, because we saw it online, it has to be legitimate. But we have all forgotten the reason why we're on the internet. Let me share something with you. In 2010, Facebook conducted a social experiment involving 61 million people. And we only know about it because they told us after the fact. If you were on Facebook and living in America on November 2nd, 2010, you were definitely a part of this experiment. Not only was that day my birthday, but that day was also the congressional election. And on that day, people on Facebook either got an "It's Election Day" message, or they would get the exact same message, but it also showed thumbnails of their friends who already said they'd voted. After matching names with voter registration, Facebook found that they were able to move an additional 300,000 people to the polls that day, unbeknownst to them. To put that in perspective, the 2016 presidential election was lost by 100,000 votes. Now again, we only know about this experiment because Facebook told us voluntarily. But of course, don't look it up. Now, I know I just mentioned Facebook, but this has to do with all social media platforms. Why is this important? And what the fuck does this have to do with outsourcing? I'll get to it. Just as a point of reference, Facebook has about 3 billion users. They have a net worth of just under $1 trillion, and they have 60,000 employees. Less employees than Dollar General. So, how does this free online platform make so much money? I've never paid for it. I remember when they flirted with the idea of making people have to pay, and we said flat out, no, I'm not paying for Facebook. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody else just pays for it. So who pays for it? And I know what you're thinking. You're like, yes, Mark, I get it. It's paid for by advertisers. I see the ads. Yeah, I see the ads. I just ignore them. I'm like, cool. Same here. Me too. As much as I can. But if I can offer this, the Chicago venture capitalist Marshall Field once said, "The customer is always right." We like the sound of that. And I'm sure you like the sound of that. In fact, I know you like the sound of that because TikTok is filled with fragile people shaming workers for making them wrong. But wait, you don't pay for social media, or the internet in that case. So that means you're not the customer. The advertisers are. So what are you? Asking for real. What are you? Who are you? Do you know? Personally, I don't think you do. Not really. Here's why. The internet is an amazing and powerful tool. It has been the instrument for a lot of change in our world. The ability to connect with anyone, anywhere in the world, and unlimited access to information has ushered in this new age of disconnectedness and misinformation. How? Well, because A tool is something passive. It waits to be picked up and used, to be manipulated to serve a purpose, and then put away. But the internet is active. It is actively pulling at you, feeding you the content it believes you will like, and sharing with you the news stories it knows you'll engage with. Calling, buzzing, dinging. So if the internet is active, then it's no longer a tool. It's something else. And if the internet, and more specifically social media, isn't a tool, then what are you? Have you ever had that recommendation and you're just like, what the fuck is this? Does the algorithm even know me? Well, yes, it does. As a matter of fact, it might even know you better than you know yourself. But you remember, you're not the customer. So the algorithm doesn't serve you. I know I'm talking a lot about this infamous algorithm, but it is not one algorithm that is the internet. The internet is just a series of computers in somebody else's warehouse or in somebody else's garage that are running a number of complex algorithms to bring forth the vibes that you call the internet. And an algorithm isn't really intelligence. It's just math. A series of if-then statements used to interpret data. The simplest form of an algorithm is a recipe. You have your data, which is your ingredient list. You have your algorithm, which is the recipe, and then you get your desired outcome. If you use a different algorithm for those same ingredients, you'll get a different outcome. I've done some work as a social media marketer earlier in my days, and marketing in general, in the performing arts, political, and mental health arenas. And to be successful at this job, you have to be successful at manipulating the algorithm. Now, thankfully, social media companies want their customers to be successful on their platforms, so they do make the information available, so you know just exactly how to trigger the algorithm to start pushing your content to more people. And I want to share some of these secrets. In order to make an accurate prediction, you need a large amount of data. So what the algorithm is doing is recording all of your online activity from the second you hop on the internet to the moment you close your eyes at night. It records everything you're doing online, parses that data, and makes a prediction about who you are and what it will take to get you to do a specific behavior, which in this case is to buy a product, which in the case of 2010, it was to go to the polls. So are you really a free and critical thinker if you're relying on the algorithm to think for you, to teach you? No, you're not, because the algorithm, on a deeper level, the algorithm is trying to change your behavior and perception. Everyone has unconscious biases that we embed into technology. It's reflecting the world as it already exists. So it's reflecting your own bias on you, which you fed to it. To what end? Behavior change. This movie, Don't Look Up, really shows what happens when we outsource our thoughts and feelings and stop being responsible for the information that we take in. Challenge your thinking by challenging the algorithm. Even Google search is trying to push you more ads. The recommendations by Google are not based on what's trending. It's not based on what's most popular. It's based on your internet activity and the thoughts and opinions of people in your area. It wants you to engage with the internet so it can sell you something. If Instagram kept fact-checking everything you said and pointing out to you how little you know about the world around you, you wouldn't be too quick to log back onto Instagram, would you? So of course it wants to pacify you and placate to get you coming back so that each and every time you scroll and a sponsored ad goes by, they've made a little bit of coin. But remember, that's just at the superficial level. The deeper level is something I want to reveal to you right now. But before we go there, I must acknowledge that I appreciate the time you guys spend with me each and every week. But you cannot forget, it's totally free. Is it though? what does it actually cost us? Facebook released this thought in the study that they published back in 2010. The results show that the messages directly influenced political self-expression, information seeking, and real-world voter behavior for millions of people. Furthermore, the messages not only influenced the users who received them, but also the users' friends and friends of friends. These results suggest that strong ties are instrumental for spreading both online and real-world behavior in human social networks. The gradual and imperceptible change of behavior and perception. Now again, of all this information I've shared, don't look it up, because you might actually learn something. But if you did want to, I'm going to drop the link for it in the description. Outsourcing your thoughts and feelings means your very existence is in comparison. There is no existence of self, only comparison. And I don't know if you've heard it, but I definitely have. Comparison is the enemy of happiness. You don't know yourself and haven't felt the pain of ignorance because we're all in a giant asylum. Thanks to this wonderful thing called confirmation bias. This toxic positivity world is saying escape anything that makes you feel uncomfortable. Escape anything that makes you feel bad. But why? We live in a world that hasn't felt the pain of not knowing. You haven't felt the pain of not knowing yourself because the world you're being fed agrees with you. But that world is very narrow, and blame shirks responsibility. Oh, there's nothing wrong with me. You need to see my point of view. Well, you just can't see eye to eye with me. Why would we want to escape that pain? Well, because that's how you keep people from knowing themselves. Why have we outsourced our very existence? Why have we made our existence outside of ourselves? A life that exists outside of ourselves is a life that relies on our senses, on what we can see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. And anything that is interpreted through sense organs is a relative experience. When I come inside from being out in the winter months of Chicago, I might dip my hands in some lukewarm water, and that water feels quite warm. But someone else who may have been working hard in the heat next to a furnace might dip their hands in that same water, and it feels quite cold. Is the water warm, or is the water cold? The water is just what the water is, but we are interpreting the water based on our own sense organs, based on our own perception, and we're not actually looking at the truth, that the water is just a certain temperature, that everything we're experiencing is just perception. But only when we know ourselves will we know truth. No, this water's hot. No, this water's cold. No, I'm actually quite cold. So there's a chance this water might be warm. Oh yeah, you're right. I'm actually quite warm. So there's a chance that this water might be cold. We don't know ourselves, so we can only interpret the world through external input. And when we outsource our thoughts and feelings, it makes the gradual and imperceptible change of your behavior and perception that much easier. The only comfort that has not allowed you to feel the pain of not knowing yourself is that the majority is with you. Thanks to this confirmation bias, everyone is in the asylum with you, so you can't see that you're crazy. You can't see that you don't know yourself because no one knows themselves, and it's so unpopular to know yourself. It's more popular to be on Facebook or on Instagram or on TikTok. But let you tell someone, I'm actually gonna spend a silent retreat trying to find myself. Now people are looking at you weird. Look at you a lot weirder than the weird content you put online. Who I am is not defined by you, or the media, or my parents, or my teacher, or my friends, or Black Twitter, or the algorithm. It's defined by me. And that's why I have to give this reminder that I do not give a fuck what you think about me because I can't control you. And I don't want to. Why the fuck would I care about what crazy people think? You're not in control of your own thinking. You outsourced it. So I definitely don't give a fuck about what you feel, because I already know you're not in charge of your feelings. Your feelings are in charge of you. Since you have no concept of self, no existence of self as separate from how you think and feel, your entire existence is in comparison with something else. Right now, if you don't have something that everybody else has, then you're not living. You're missing out. You're miserable. How many of you have seen these trends online about an air fryer? Now, I don't know about you, but I'm old enough to remember that air fryers actually suck. They make the worst popcorn. They were around in the 80s and 90s, but they're back because of these TikTok trends of, hey, put a Pop-Tart in an air fryer, put a Twinkie in an air fryer. And all of a sudden, people who had never searched air fryers in their life are now thinking about buying an air fryer, thanks to the gradual and imperceptible change of your behavior. You've not been this way your whole life, I promise you that. You've just outsourced who you are your whole life, and you are blissfully unaware of the way outside events and outside forces have actually changed you. It seems fine now because you're not the only one, but what if you were? Imagine how painful it would be if you were the only person in the world who did not know themselves. Imagine if you were the only person in the world who didn't have a nose. If you take off your nose right now, you will be able to process 20% more oxygen. Your body would get more oxygen, you'll feel better, you'll think clearer. But oh my goodness, how much would you suffer? Why? Because you're the only one without a nose. Who cares if you're actually in better health? You don't have a nose, and everyone else does. To be comfortable, we are avoiding the pain of not knowing. Not just ourselves, but basic information. We don't want to be told we're wrong because we don't want to know the pain of not knowing. We subscribe only to that which confirms what we know, and we don't seek out and we even sneer at opposing viewpoints. If you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. And if you're not with me, then you're my enemy. Well, I would just like to remind you that only a Sith Lord deals in absolutes, and as a trained Jedi, I will do as I must. Binaries are basic. It's never this or that. Once you start to know yourself, then you can start to live blissfully rather than living blissfully ignorant. If you don't know who you truly are, then nothing you do in this world, nothing at all matters, because it's all reactionary and motivated by external events. But who are you, and what do you want? You'd better know. And if you don't know, you'd better find out. I've been on this soapbox because, oh my goodness, I'm really passionate about this, and I really see how much this is hurting us as a nation, hurting us as individuals. And yes, it's kind of a personal plea, a little vendetta, because I have seen how much of the trauma and abuse I've gone through and have even dished out myself. I'm seeing how much this impedes connectedness. We can't have conversations with ourselves, so we can't have conversations with others. We're projecting our insecurities on other people. We're killing common sense, and we're killing sense of humor. I am the snarkiest, most sarcastic motherfucker you'd ever come across. And if you're going to take all of my sarcasm personal, we're not going to have a good time, because I just met you a couple minutes ago. I can't read your whole life story and know that you've got all these insecurities. If you want to be an elevator, be an elevator. But if you're a person, then get rid of your buttons. One way to do that is to get to know yourself. I actually started my daily podcast, Wake Up Call with Mark West, in which we are trying to do just that. Today, we talked about distractions, which we'll be talking about all week long. The ways in which technology and other areas of our life can actually distract us from the here and now. I want us to shift from living in an online world to living in the real world that happens to be online. That real world can still have Instagram and TikTok and the internet, but we understand that that is one way to enjoy or disconnect from life. But it is not life itself. The way we talk to people in the comments is not the way we talk to people in real life. The things we see online is not really the way things operate in real life. And the first few suggestions you're pushed by the algorithm are probably the ones you should ignore. If you would like to dive deeper in this, I encourage you to check out my daily wake-up calls. We're talking about small changes we can implement each and every day to start taking control of ourselves and our life experiences. I can drop the link for that in the description, but it's available wherever you stream your podcasts until January 31st, when it will move over to my Patreon, where it will sit and live exclusively. Speaking of which, now would be a great time to move over there and subscribe. You can get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to how I make this and my Wake Up Calls podcast, and you can offer input on future episodes. That and my social links are, of course, available on my website, www.heymarkwest.com. And while you're subscribing to the Wake Up Calls, why not also follow and subscribe to Real Talk with Mark West? And don't forget to rate and review. If you appreciated this episode and have a friend you think needs to hear it, please feel free to share it with them as well. The internet has brought about great change in our world, but it's not where life happens. Don't you want to know yourself better than the algorithm? Well, spend some time this week getting reacquainted. I'll see you back here next week, and I would tell you the topic, but it's probably going to make you mad and make you not want to come back, and to be honest, I wouldn't blame you. See you guys Tuesday.